Assalamu alaikum, welcome to my channel, Pondering Soul. My name is Yusuf, and in today's video I'm going to give you a brief description into my life, where I've come from, why I reverted to Islam, and where I'm aiming at in the future. Now, I have done a more detailed description of this in a 4-part article called Introducing Myself, which you'll find on my website, which is ponderingssoul.blog. It does go into my life in a lot more detail, so if you wish to read that, please check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But other than that, this is just going to be a very quick summary. I don't want to spend too long rambling on, so I will be brushing over what's mostly in these articles, but just missing out a bit here and there and just giving you the main points. I will start from the beginning. I was born into a Catholic family. My mother was born in Poland, moved over here when she was younger. My father was born in Glasgow, moved over here when he met my mother. I was sent to a Catholic school. I went to a Sunday school, which was a Polish Catholic school as well, where they did teach me about the religion. I was baptized and christened as well. Although my family were religious, they weren't pushy with it, so we weren't forced into anything as we got older. We were just kind of left to make our own decisions on religion and religious matters. My father, he was an interesting character. People that knew him really liked him. They thought he was funny, witty. He was a popular person, but he did have some problems. He was addicted to heroin, which eventually killed him when I was 9, and he was always in and out of prison because he would get caught stealing and things along that nature, trying to feed his habit. My mother, she was a very hard-working person, spent most of her time working in restaurants, and she refused to go on benefits, so it was from her labour that we were able to obviously eat food and have a house and be clothed, but she was generally making up my father's slack. And when he wasn't in prison, our financial burdens would increase because he would try to use my mum's money to feed his habit as well, which meant that while we were growing up on a council estate in North England, we grew up in relative poverty, and this shaped the earlier part of my life. We weren't rich by any stretch of the matter, and yeah, we struggled somewhat. My father, he put a massive emphasis on making sure that we were strong because he knew we were in a rough area and we were likely to come up against rough people because there was lots of drugs and alcohol problems and violence on the estate that we lived in, grew up in. Very many dodgy characters roaming about, and so his emphasis to begin with was just to make us brave and strong. He did this in a very peculiar way. He'd make us watch horror movies. So before he passed away when I was 9, we were watching films like The Exorcist, Children of the Corn, The Omen, all of these really scary films for a child to be watching. He'd also take us for walks in the dark on fields at night without any torches, and he would make us do late night workout sessions with the motto, no pain, no gain, and the aim was to make us sweat or to do a certain exercise until we couldn't do it any further. He really wanted us to be strong. When he was in prison and when he passed away, and obviously because my mum was working a lot, and if he wasn't around to look after us, our grandmother would watch us. My grandmother was a very small Polish lady. She suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. She was a very quirky character. She was the major caregiver for me and my brother while we were growing up, and then my little sister when she was born a little bit later. My grandma was not a very strict person, and so growing up, me and my brother pretty much had the freedom to do what we wanted. We would build dens, stay out quite late. We started smoking and drinking relatively early. I think by the time before I was even in high school, we were drinking alcohol. So I'd have been about 10, 11 at that point. We'd already tried smoking cigarettes. I think I started smoking weed when I was about 12 years old. So yeah, we were very embedded in this council estate culture, of lack of a better word to describe it. When I was 9, my father passed away from a drug overdose. At this point, I remember becoming a lot less Christian or bitter towards religion in general. I had been taught a lot about God up until that point, but I kind of felt bitter to the idea that God would put us through something like that. And then kind of raising from that point onwards into my teenage years, I was quite staunchly atheistic. I had to grow up quite quickly. At that point, I was the man of the house. Being a teenager without father or any kind of strong father figure after that point, me and my brother were quite naughty in school. We were always getting in trouble for silly things. At one point, I annoyed a teacher so much he threw a chair at me. He missed the chair and then threw a book. Things like that. We got into water fights and flower fights and mud fights in the science labs. We were very rebellious children. Leaving high school, I think I dropped out of college twice. I ended up just working a lot. The money that I earned from these jobs would generally tend to go to funding my very hedonistic lifestyle. I was very materialistic. I used to get patterns in my hair every 2 weeks. Spend all my money on clothes, on aftershaves, computer games, on going out, on drinking and smoking. I was very embedded into this lifestyle. I had groups of friends who were all very different kinds of people. Some of my friends were very chavvy, scally types. Other friends were more punk rocker, mosher types. Other friends were like the car cruising people who would all go driving randomly, and they all owned cars. They were all very different groups of people, and they weren't necessarily people you could mix together, but I would quite easily drift from one group to another, which made me a bit of a social chameleon of sorts. I was very much dedicated to this lifestyle for a while. When I think I was about 18, I also met my first proper Muslim friends. We worked in the same restaurant together. I remember being very fond of them. They were very good people, and they were very eager to engage in strange conversations with me. I was very much into conspiracy videos at this point of my life, and I had all these kind of questions in mind. And I think at the point, my idea of religion was that it was a tool for the powerful to control the weak, and so I didn't look upon religion very favourably. My friends were very eager to talk to me about religion, and they would allow me to ask awkward questions or the controversial questions, and they wouldn't get mad at me about it or make me feel as though I was an evil person for asking them. And yeah, so I was very thankful to them for that. Before that point, I was very dogmatic atheist. I believed that there was no such thing as a God, and it was an active belief. It wasn't just a lack of belief in God. It was a very certain perspective. I really did believe there was no God. And then talking to them made me realise about how dogmatic I was in that belief, and I toned it down a lot in response to my conversations with them, and I became more agnostic. But for the most part, I was generally not religious still. I drifted from one job to another, and continuing the lifestyle I was, which was revolved around drink, going out, meeting different people, being a hedonist / materialist. Eventually I got very tired of this kind of life, and I had the urge to just run away. So what I did is I ended up traveling around Asia for about 18 months, where I went around 6 to 7 different countries over an 18-month period. The original plan was like 18 countries in 6 months, but it didn't turn out that way. It ended up being a lot longer and a lot less countries. One of the major countries that I went to that really stuck with me was Malaysia, which was a Muslim country. And while I was there, I lived on an island, and I was running a bar there. And on this island, the population that lived there were all Muslim. And in the mornings, usually at the end of the night for me and the people that I was with, we'd just been spending all night partying. The azan would start to go off, and the Muslims would just be getting out of bed to go to prayer, while we were just getting into bed after being a bunch of degenerates. For lack of better words. But yeah, I remember that my experience with the azan, that wasn't the only time. I'd been on a holiday to Turkey when I was like 18 or something prior to that, and I'd heard the azan there. Similar circumstances, usually early in the morning after we'd been drinking, and my experience with the azan was always the same. I really loved listening to it, and I just used to sit down, and it'd make me think about deep things, about life, about the universe and existence and meaning. Whenever I heard it, it would trigger these kind of thoughts, and I generally tend to move to somewhere so I could be on my own, so I could think about these things as well when that kind of experience would occur. But yeah, so over that 18-month period, I did spend a lot of time just exploring the world and who I was, and obviously being away from where I was born and raised, I had the opportunity to kind of experiment in terms of what kind of person I wanted to be, so I could be very creative with my personality. But this eventually wore off. I began to miss home. I went back to England to see my family again, with the intent of only spending about 3 months there before leaving again. This 3-month ended up being a lot longer. I ended up becoming a bit stuck. I had to move into a house with my brother, but that meant paying bills and rent. I got my old job back, but at much less the pay. Eventually it felt like I was stuck in the bubble that I'd left, and I really didn't want to be there anymore. This led to me being severely depressed, and I had severe social anxiety within about 4 months of returning home, I think. So I ended up moving out of the house with my brother, and I got a house on my own. At this point, I'd already converted. Now, the period of conversion was within that first 6 months of returning home. I've heard a lot of other people talk about their reversion stories, and they talk about this single moment where they just feel, which was very memorable to them. Now, for me, it was a weird thing. Like I say, I was severely depressed at that point, and I had no sense of time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but every day just kind of moulded into the other. I do remember where I was and at what point or what year it was that I converted. I don't even know if I know what year. It could have been end of 2013, early 2014. But I did it on my own. Basically what had happened is I had gotten sick of the lifestyle that I was living. It all just felt very empty and meaningless. I felt like I had no direction. I'd been looking into a lot of religions. I'd been reading into Buddhism. I had a bit of a background in Christianity. I'd looked into Rastafari, and into Judaism, into Hinduism. I was very influenced by a guy called Ram Dass. I was interested in another gentleman called Eckhart Tolle. I was exploring with a lot of different things. I was reading a lot about atheism, and because I was isolated, I was just spending a lot of time reflecting on things. I eventually started reading the Quran again. I'd read it previously before I'd gone travelling. I'd approached it again for the second time, and the more I read it and the more I looked into the life of the Prophet, the more that I was starting to realise that most of the things that were being said here were things that I really already believed. I believed in one God. I believed that Jesus existed already. I just really couldn't get around the idea that he was himself God, which was something that they tried to teach us in Catholic school with the whole Trinity thing. I really didn't like the fact that there was statues and things in churches, and it seemed rather silly to me because these all felt like idols. And not only that, it didn't really make sense that they would know what Jesus looked like. There wasn't ever paintings of him or anything like that. So when I was seeing these idols or this image of Jesus on a cross or the picture of Mary, as far as they're concerned, they might not even look like that. So they don't really know who it is that they're worshipping when they're directing themselves towards these statues. But it wasn't just statues of them. They had statues of saints, and people would often pray towards these saints. I have family members that still do. So there was a lot of quite clearly pagan elements to Christianity that put me off approaching that as a religion that I could accept. There was a similar theme with Buddhism. I'd spent a bit of time in the Buddhist temples. There I watched them worship. They worship very, funnily enough, very similar to the Muslims. They would bow. I think they'd even pray 5 times a day, and there was a lot of prostration involved in this worship. The only thing is that rather than being in the process of worshipping the creator or the source of creation, they spent a lot of time worshipping these very large gold statues of men and women, some of whom existed not even 50 years ago. So these were relatively recent people, and the worship that they were involved in was directed specifically towards these people. They made that quite clear. So yeah, I'd looked through all these different religions. Islam was the one that I was inclining towards. It contained a lot of the beliefs that I was already holding myself, and so eventually I had to take my Shahada. So I did it. Unfortunately, because of the circumstances I was in at the time, I can't remember the exact date. I have a vague memory of taking the Shahada on my own, but every day that surrounded that was relatively the same. There was an improvement from that point on, and so yeah, I was in no way a perfect Muslim upon saying my Shahada. It wasn't just a click moment where I just dropped everything that was bad beforehand. It was a process, and slowly, alhamdulillah, I managed to improve myself over time. Today, I pray my 5 prayers a day. I give the zakah. I fast during Ramadan. I try to fast voluntarily as well. I go to zikr on Thursdays when I have the time, and I make Friday prayer. I fulfill the commitments that are expected of me. Obviously, no longer drink. I don't eat pork. I quit smoking, and alhamdulillah, my life has improved a lot. It took a while. It's been a slow process over time, but I eventually got there in the end. I moved into a house on my own where I became more isolated, and I feel like there was a period where I was becoming a lot more lost during these days of being on my own in this house. I wasn't really in communication with Muslims other than this one Muslim friend that I had that would come around every now and then. But even then, I'd avoid pretty much everyone. I was avoiding my own family. I was very lost. But eventually I felt like I needed direction. While I was abroad, I'd spent some time working in some animal sanctuaries. I'd worked with lions, tigers, bears, deer, bull, peacocks, a variety of very different and strange animals. And I'd really enjoyed my time working with them. And so I figured maybe that I would try to go to university to become a zoologist. So in trying to achieve that goal, I went to college again, right, and I undertook access to higher education diploma in combined science, which involved doing physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. Although I'd started off quite shaky, in the end I did really well. Alhamdulillah, I finished with a distinction, which was the highest grade marker that they offered, and I also got a reward for the most improved student, because like I say, when I began my studies there, I was in a very shaky place. I hadn't been in education for a decent amount of time, and then by the end of it I was consistently getting good grades, and I got exactly what I needed to get into university. The only thing is that once completing my course in combined science, I changed my mind. I no longer wanted to go and pursue a degree in zoology. I had stumbled upon another course, and just reading through the units, I knew straight away that that's exactly what I wanted to get into, and that was philosophy. And the units that I read that drew me towards it was, in the first year, one of the first units was Death, God and the Meaning of Life. Another unit was Mind, Reason, Reality. It was an introduction to the history of philosophy philosophy. The other one was ethics and social philosophy. And this just gripped me, especially the death, God and the meaning of life. Those kind of conversations I absolutely love. The moment I read it and I'd looked into the little kind of bio that they give you as an introduction to the course, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I emailed them, told them that I was interested in doing it. I hadn't studied philosophy prior to that, not in any academic sense. I'd maybe read a few quotes here and there, but other than that, I had no idea about philosophy as a subject. I just knew that I really liked asking questions, and I really liked debating and discussing things with people, important issues to do with ethics, politics, the meaning of life, existence, all of it interested me. And so I got onto the course, and over them 3 years, similar to how I'd experienced the science course, when I got in there I was struggling because I hadn't really studied that bit prior to it, but I relatively quickly got into the swing of things, and then by the end of the first year I was receiving first class grades in my essays and assignments and exams, and then by the time I'd finished I'd received a first class degree in philosophy. Alhamdulillah, I really did well in the end, and I enjoyed my entire time there. I made some really good friends while I was there, and it's something that over time I've become even more passionate about. During those 3 years in university, I got married. My wife is also a revert, and we've had a child. I've got a daughter who'll be 2 this September. Yeah, I'm just right now in a lot better place than I've ever been prior to today. I'm more at ease with myself, I'm more at ease with the world. I understand that there's things that I can't change, and there's things that I can. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy that I took that step and that I became a Muslim in the end, and that I made steps towards becoming a better Muslim. While I was in university, I took a Saturday class, and I did a level 1 foundation year in Islamic fiqh and Aqidah, and I did that here in Manchester with a sheikh there. So Alhamdulillah, I was grateful for that. Inshallah, in the future, I hope to they do I think a second year foundation course there as well, and hopefully sometime in the future I really do want to maybe get into doing an alim course. I'm in the process of learning Arabic. I've made a friend who's from Yemen who lives in Saudi Arabia, who in the process of teaching me Arabic, and I'm reciprocating by trying to teach him some English as well. So we're doing like a value for value swap thing there. I just want to increase my knowledge in Islam. I have a little library here. I'm doing a lot of reading still in philosophy, politics, religion. These things I'm all very interested about. And so my YouTube channel, my blog, ponderingsoul.blog, and my Twitter is very much going to be about engaging in these kind of things, interesting subjects, controversial issues, generally the things that are very important. And because they're important and people's views are so polarized on them, they generally tend to turn into this kind of like toxic thing. Inshallah, I would like to delete the toxic element of these discussions and give you, the viewers, a place where you can come and maybe listen to these ideas being presented in a way that doesn't give you anxiety. And I'm hoping to kind of abstract the actual arguments, removing all the rhetoric and all the the fallacies, the ad hominems, and just present ideas for what they're worth. Inshallah, I also want to try and present them in the best way possible. I obviously have a bias in Islam, being a convert to Islam itself, but I feel with my training in philosophy and studying philosophy, I'm very good at least I think I am anyway. Obviously, if you watch these videos, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel as though I'm very good at putting myself into other people's shoes and presenting arguments for what they're worth. And obviously I'm not perfect at it. I do make mistakes from time to time, but I do try to not let my ego get in the way too much. And if I'm wrong, I like to admit it. So yeah, that's the general aim of this YouTube channel. My blog is just to kind of present interesting ideas, to engage in discussions and debates, whether that's about philosophy, politics, just controversial issues that are currently happening today or like going into the future. It's just to engage with people. So if you are interested in these kind of things, please subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @YusufPonders, so you can check me out on there. Also follow or subscribe to my blog. I'll leave links in the description box below, so please check them out. And also I have a Patreon account. It's a bit early probably for many people. You're most likely going to want to see what kind of material I'm producing into the future. So if you want to wait, that's no problem at all. I used to work in call centers and in restaurants and things like that, and I'd work for other people. I would like to make myself self-employed, so I am aiming at becoming a freelance writer as well as a YouTuber and inshallah a podcaster. So I will be working towards trying to make myself self-sufficient. You can help me out with that by contributing on Patreon. Like I say, I'll leave that in the description box below. If you're able to, Jazakallah, may Allah reward you. If you're not able to, that's not a problem. I'm going to try see if I can make money elsewhere as well with my writing and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm very excited to get this channel rolling. Inshallah, you'll see me producing a lot more content in the future. I've got a few things in the pipeline. I've got a critical analysis video I've got planned of Katie Hopkins' new video, Homelands, which I'm currently in the process of sorting out. I'm going to do some analysis on the debate between Abdullah Andalusi with Mohammed Hijab against an older gentleman who I can't remember his name, and Cosmic Skeptic. There's a few ideas that they discussed, like the idea of the infinite. If you are interested in anything that I've said, please engage, leave comments in the description below. I will try to answer as many of you as possible. If you make a YouTube response, send me an email. You can also find that on my website, ponderingsoul.blog. My email address will be on there. I'll try to respond to you. And yeah, so that's what I'm here for. I'm here to discuss interesting things with interesting people. So inshallah, I look forward to having a conversation with you. Whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't matter. Hopefully you'll enjoy my material. Please give me feedback. If there's things you can think I can improve on, alhamdulillah, if you can share that with me, it'll be greatly appreciated, because I really do want to make this successful, inshallah. Thank you for your time. I've tried to make this as quick as possible. I know I've probably brushed past a massive story really quickly. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to delve into a little bit deeper. If you are interested in finding out a bit more detail about this story, yeah, you're more than welcome to check out the series of 4 articles that I've written on this on my website. But other than that, thank you for your time. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum, and I'll see you soon, inshallah. Don't forget to subscribe.